The laughter began as a ripple, first from the back corner where Trevor Harrison and his cohorts typically sprawled with permanent smirks etched across their faces, then spreading outward like a contagion until it infected half the classroom. Eliza Bennett felt her cheeks burn as she hurriedly tried to slide the worn, leather-bound book deeper into her desk. Her fingers trembled against the cracked spine, ancient and smooth from generations of hands that had held it before hers. The rich, unmistakable scent of aged paper, like cinnamon and dust intermingled, wafted upward as she jostled it further from view. "What's that you've got there, Bible girl?" Trevor called out, the nickname landing like a slap. Mrs. Winters had stepped out for just 2 minutes. 2 minutes was all it took for the wolves to circle. "Bringing your grandma's antique to show and tell?" Eliza kept her eyes fixed on her notebook, the neat rows of her handwriting blurring as unwelcome tears threatened to form. She was 12 years old, old enough to know crying would only make everything worse. "It's just a book," she managed, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "Just a book," mimicked Brittany Coleman, her voice pitched to theatrical incredulity. With her perfect blonde ponytail and designer backpack, Brittany had appointed herself Trevor's lieutenant in all matters of social hierarchy. "That thing looks like it survived the flood with Noah himself." The classroom clock ticked loudly in the brief silence that followed, tick, 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 marking the seconds of her humiliation with metronomic precision. That sound would become the background rhythm to many of Eliza's worst memories at Westfield Middle School. "My dad says people who need religion are just too weak to face reality," announced Trevor, leaning back in his chair until it balanced precariously on 2 legs. "No offense, Bible girl." The classroom door swung open, and Mrs. Winters strode back in, her sensible heels clicking against the linoleum. The laughter died instantly, replaced by the rustling of papers and the sudden attentiveness of students who moments before had been spectators to Eliza's shame. "All right, class, let's continue our discussion about the research paper assignment," Mrs. Winters said, adjusting her glasses as she scanned the room. "Remember, you'll need to select a topic that can be supported with at least 3 academic sources. Your outline is due next Monday." As Mrs. Winters turned to write on the board, Eliza felt someone's gaze on her. Glancing sideways, she locked eyes with Noah Chen, who sat 2 seats away. He wasn't smiling or frowning, just watching her with an unreadable expression before quickly looking away. Noah was quiet, smart, and largely invisible in the social battlefield of 7th grade. Eliza had spoken to him maybe 5 times all year, mostly about borrowed pencils or homework clarifications. When the bell finally rang, Eliza gathered her things slowly, allowing the stampede of freedom-seeking students to clear before she attempted her exit. As she slid the Bible into her backpack, she hesitated. For a fleeting moment, she considered leaving it in her locker tomorrow, or better yet, at home where it belonged, safe from mocking eyes and cruel voices. "That's a really old Bible," came a voice beside her. Eliza startled to find Noah still there, his backpack already slung over one shoulder. "My grandfather has one kind of like it, but in Mandarin." "It was my great-grandmother's," Eliza replied cautiously, waiting for the punchline or hidden barb. Noah nodded, as though this was perfectly reasonable information. "Cool. See you tomorrow." And then he was gone, leaving Eliza to wonder if that brief exchange counted as actual conversation. That evening, as rain tapped gently against her bedroom window, Eliza sat cross-legged on her bed with the Bible open before her. The smell of rain-soaked earth drifted through the partially opened window, mingling with the ancient paper scent that seemed to intensify in the quiet of her room. Her fingers traced the delicate pages where her great-grandmother Eleanor had once penned small notes in the margins, tiny insights and questions stretching back to 1943. She'd been reading Eleanor's notes more than the actual verses lately. There was something comforting about the faded handwriting, the connection to someone who had lived and wondered and believed long before Eliza was born. Next to Psalm 23 was a simple annotation: "Read during the blackouts. Courage found. Eleanor had lived through World War II as a young woman, experiencing fears Eliza could hardly imagine. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Marina. "Decided on your research paper topic yet?" Eliza stared at the message, then back at the Bible. An idea began to form. Risky, perhaps foolish, but somehow right. Her fingers hovered over the phone before she typed, "I think so. Going to write about how ancient texts influence modern ethical thinking." Marina's response was immediate. "Sounds boring, but very you. Mrs. W will love it." What Eliza didn't text back was that she planned to use the Bible as one of her sources, not just any Bible, this Bible, with Eleanor's notes providing a personal historical lens. Something in her refused to hide it away, to be ashamed of this connection to her past and her faith. The next day, Mrs. Winters handed out topic proposal forms. "Remember," she emphasized, "your sources need to be academically rigorous. No Wikipedia, no random blogs, and please appropriate material for a scholarly paper." As Eliza wrote down her topic, she felt someone watching her again. Noah Chen was looking her way, his expression still unreadable before he ducked his head back to his own work. The classroom clock continued its steady tick-tick-tick as students scribbled their proposals and Mrs. Winters paced the aisles. When she reached Eliza's desk, Mrs. Winters paused, reading over her shoulder. "Interesting approach, Eliza. See me after class to discuss your sources." Trevor, who sat behind Eliza, snickered. "Teacher's pet in trouble," he whispered just loud enough for nearby students to hear. The familiar heat of embarrassment crawled up Eliza's neck. After class, she approached Mrs. Winters' desk with her proposal and a growing knot in her stomach. "Eliza, while I appreciate your interest in ethical frameworks, I'm concerned about your plan to use religious text as a primary source," Mrs. Winters said, her tone gentle but firm. "This is a research paper, not a theological exploration." "But Mrs. Winters, I'm not trying to make a religious argument," Eliza explained, her voice steadier than she felt. "I want to examine how ancient ethical writings, including but not limited to the Bible, have shaped modern thinking. My great-grandmother made notes during World War II that show how people applied these ideas during crisis." Mrs. Winters' expression softened slightly. "That's actually a more nuanced approach than I expected. Still, you'll need scholarly sources analyzing these texts, not just the texts themselves." "I understand," Eliza nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, she discovered Trevor loitering by the door, clearly having eavesdropped. His smirk told her everything she needed to know about what would come next. "Bible girl strikes again," he announced loudly as they entered the hallway. "Writing your research paper on fairy tales?" "Leave her alone," came an unexpected voice. Noah stood nearby at his locker, not looking at either of them. "At least her paper will be original, not copied from the internet like yours probably will be." Trevor's face darkened. "What did you say, Chen?" "You heard me," Noah replied, finally turning to face them. "And so did Mr. Polanski." He nodded toward the vice principal, who was indeed watching them from across the corridor. Trevor glared, but backed away, muttering something about freaks sticking together as he retreated. "Thanks," Eliza said when Trevor was out of earshot. "You didn't have to do that." Noah shrugged, suddenly interested in organizing his textbooks. "It's whatever. He's a jerk to everyone." That small act of defense, however dismissively delivered, lingered with Eliza throughout the day. As did the clock's persistent tick-tick-tick during afternoon classes, marking time until the next potential humiliation. The weekend arrived, bringing blessed relief from school and the chance to work on her paper in peace. Eliza spread her materials across the kitchen table, library books on ethical philosophy, her laptop, and Eleanor's Bible. The familiar scent of aged paper mingled now with the aroma of her mother's coffee brewing nearby. "Quite the scholarly setup," her mother observed, setting a mug of hot chocolate beside Eliza's notes. "What's the paper about?" Eliza explained her concept, watching her mother's face carefully. "Do you think it's a stupid idea? Using great-grandma's Bible?" Her mother considered this, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. I think Eleanor would be honored. But are you doing this for the right reasons? Not just to prove something to those kids at school? The question caught Eliza off guard. Was she using the Bible to make a point? To be obstinate? The clock on the kitchen wall, tick, 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 filled the silence as she contemplated her motives. I don't know, she admitted finally. Maybe a little of both. But I also really am interested in how people find guidance during hard times. Like how Eleanor used these verses during the war. Her mother nodded. Then it's worth doing. Just be prepared that not everyone will understand. That was an understatement. When Monday arrived and students shared their topics in small peer groups, Trevor and Brittany exchanged exaggerated eye rolls at Eliza's explanation. Seriously? Brittany said. You're actually going through with the Bible thing? Mrs. Winters will fail you. Actually, Noah interjected, religious texts are studied academically all the time. Harvard has entire courses on it. He hadn't spoken directly to Eliza since the incident in the hallway, but now he was inexplicably coming to her defense again. Wow, Chen, didn't realize you joined the Jesus Club too, Trevor snorted. I haven't, Noah replied evenly. I'm just not ignorant about academic practices. The exchange left Eliza feeling both defended and somehow more vulnerable. Now they'd lump Noah into their mockery too, creating guilt on top of her embarrassment. The classroom clock's tick, tick, tick seemed to grow louder, a countdown to the next barbed comment. As the days passed and research for the paper intensified, Eliza found herself increasingly absorbed in Eleanor's margin notes. There was wisdom there, yes, but also questions, doubts, and moments of profound honesty that textbooks couldn't provide. One notation particularly struck her, written beside the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Courage isn't absence of fear, it's purpose despite fear. Eliza copied this into her notebook, the words resonating deeply. The aged paper smell had become a comfort now, a reminder of connection across generations. She found herself bringing the Bible to school more often, using brief moments between classes to check references or read Eleanor's thoughts. It was during one such moment in the library that disaster struck. She'd left her table briefly to find a reference book and returned to find Trevor and his friends huddled around her belongings, the Bible open in Trevor's hands as he performed a mocking, dramatic reading. "Dear Lord," he intoned in a wavering falsetto, "today the bombs fell closer than ever. We prayed together in the shelter." Seriously, guys, listen to this melodrama. With horror, Eliza realized he wasn't reading from the Bible itself, but from a loose paper tucked inside, one of Eleanor's actual letters that Eliza had been using for her research. Something personal and precious being turned into entertainment. "Give that back!" she demanded, her voice cracking as she lunged forward. Trevor held it above his head, laughing. "Bible girl's got a temper! Isn't that a sin or something? What's going on here?" The sharp voice of Mrs. Livingston, the librarian, cut through the scene. "Trevor Harrison, what are you doing with Eliza's property?" Trevor's smile vanished. "Just looking." She left it open on the table. "That doesn't give you the right to touch what isn't yours," Mrs. Livingston said firmly. "Return it immediately and come with me to discuss appropriate library behavior." Red-faced, Trevor slapped the letter back onto the Bible and stalked away. The damage was done, though. Eleanor's letter, which had survived war, decades in storage and countless moves, now bore a jagged tear along one edge where Trevor had gripped it too roughly. Eliza gathered her things with trembling hands, fighting back tears. The paper's ancient scent now seemed to carry notes of loss and violation. As she carefully tucked the damaged letter back into the Bible, she noticed Noah watching from behind a nearby bookshelf, his expression troubled. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly, approaching once Trevor and Mrs. Livingston had gone. Eliza nodded stiffly, not trusting her voice. "What he did was really messed up," Noah continued. "Those were real letters from your great-grandmother. During World War II, Eliza managed, she kept them with her Bible." Noah was silent for a moment, then said, My grandfather has journals from when he left China. Not religious stuff, but important memories, you know. I'd be really upset if someone treated them like that. Something about his understanding, not pity, but genuine comprehension of what had been violated, loosened the knot in Eliza's chest. The worst part is, now I don't even want to finish this stupid paper. They've made it into a joke. That would let them win, Noah pointed out, and from what I've heard about your paper, it actually sounds interesting. He hesitated, then added, if you want help fixing that letter, my mom does restoration work at the museum. She knows how to repair old documents. The offer was so unexpected, so precisely what she needed, that Eliza could only stare at him. Really? You do that? Noah shrugged, suddenly shy again. It's not a big deal. Just thought I'd offer. That afternoon, instead of going straight home, Eliza found herself sitting in the Chen family's dining room. Noah's mother, Dr. Ice Chen, examined Eleanor's damaged letter with the careful attention of someone accustomed to handling historical artifacts. The tear is clean, which is good, she explained, showing Eliza the specialized tissue paper and adhesive she would use. This technique is similar to what we use on museum documents from the same era. As Dr. Chen worked, the familiar scent of aged paper mixed with the unfamiliar aromas of green tea and the subtle incense lingering in the Chen home. Noah sat nearby, occasionally asking thoughtful questions about Eleanor's letters and Eliza's research. They made fun of the old Bible in the classroom, Eliza found herself saying. But these writings are real history. They matter. Noah nodded. People mock what they don't understand, or what makes them uncomfortable. His mother looked up from her work. In the museum, we say that objects carry stories. Your Bible carries your family's story that has value beyond religious meaning. She carefully placed the repaired letter on a drying rack. There. It will need to set overnight, but the damage will hardly show. Eliza felt an overwhelming gratitude. Thank you so much. I don't know how to repay you. Dr. Chen smiled. No repayment necessary. Noah tells me you're the only student who explained the math homework to him last month when he missed school for his grandfather's funeral. Kindness circles back. Eliza had almost forgotten that small interaction. Noah had missed 3 days, and she'd simply shared her notes and explained a particularly tricky algebra concept. It had seemed like nothing at the time. The clock on the Chen's wall, tick, 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 reminded Eliza how late it was getting. Her mother would be wondering where she was. As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Chen offered to drive her home. I can walk with her, Noah suggested. It's not far, and I could use some fresh air. The rain had stopped, leaving behind that distinct petrichor, the earth after rain smell that made everything feel cleaner, renewed. They walked mostly in companionable silence, their footsteps in sync on the damp sidewalk. Why do you keep defending me? Eliza finally asked. It just makes Trevor target you too. Noah considered this for several steps before answering. My grandfather has this saying, stand for nothing, fall for anything. Trevor was already a jerk to me anyway, so... He shrugged. Besides, my parents didn't raise me to watch bullying and do nothing. When they reached her house, Eliza hesitated. Thank you for everything. Noah nodded, suddenly awkward again. See you tomorrow. Good luck with your paper. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of research and writing. Eliza threw herself into the project with renewed determination, integrating Eleanor's experiences with scholarly analyses of how ancient ethical teachings provided frameworks during historical crises. The Bible's aged paper scent became a constant companion as she worked, the ticking of her desk clock marking progress rather than tension. When presentation day arrived, Eliza felt both prepared and terrified. Students would give 5-minute summaries of their research, followed by brief Q&A from peers. Trevor went early, delivering a predictably superficial presentation on sports marketing that nevertheless earned appreciative comments from his friends. Brittany discussed fashion trends with beautiful visual aids but questionable academic sources. When Mrs. Winters called Eliza's name, the classroom fell into a different kind of silence, expectant, perhaps hoping for failure. The clock's tick-tick-tick seemed impossibly loud as Eliza set up her materials, placing Eleanor's Bible carefully on the podium beside her notes. My research examines how ancient ethical frameworks provide guidance during modern crises, she began, her voice steadier than expected. I've analyzed 3 major texts, including philosophical writings from Aristotle, Buddhist teachings on suffering, and yes, biblical wisdom literature. She paused, meeting the eyes of her classmates directly. But this isn't just theoretical. I've incorporated primary source material from my great-grandmother Eleanor, who documented how these ancient teachings helped people survive the very real horrors of World War II. As she spoke, something shifted in the classroom atmosphere. Whether it was her evident preparation, her passion for the subject, or the compelling excerpts from Eleanor's letters, even the typically disengaged students seemed to be listening. Noah, from his seat by the window, gave her a subtle thumbs up. In conclusion, Eliza said, these ancient texts endure not because they're relics or fairy tales, but because they speak to universal human experiences, fear, courage, ethical dilemmas, and hope that remain relevant regardless of one's personal beliefs. When she finished, the silence held for a moment before Mrs. Winters said, "Excellent work, Eliza. Very thorough research and thoughtful analysis. Questions from the class?" To Eliza's surprise, Trevor raised his hand. Her stomach clenched as Mrs. Winters acknowledged him. "So," he said, his tone uncharacteristically serious, "your great-grandmother actually wrote those notes during real bombing raids and stuff. That must have been intense." It wasn't mockery. It was interest? Eliza nodded cautiously. Yes, she lived in London during the Blitz. Several other questions followed, genuine inquiries about Eleanor's experiences, the similarities between different ethical traditions, even the process of working with fragile historical documents. Not once did anyone snicker or roll their eyes at the mention of the Bible. After class, as Eliza gathered her materials, Brittany approached her. "That was actually pretty good," she admitted. "My grandma is super religious too, but she never talks about why. Maybe I should ask her sometime." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. The clock, tick, 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 marked the moment as significant somehow. Later that day, as Eliza retrieved books from her locker, she found a folded note tucked into her math textbook. Opening it, revealed Trevor's messy handwriting. "Sorry about ripping your grandma's letter. That was messed up. My grandpa was in WB too." Eliza stared at the note, reading it twice to be sure she understood. It wasn't eloquent or overly remorseful, but the simple acknowledgement felt monumental. Noah appeared beside her. "Good presentation," he said. "Everyone was talking about it at lunch." "Thanks," Eliza replied, still processing Trevor's note. "I can't believe people actually listened." "You made it real," Noah said simply. "Hard to mock something when you see the actual person behind it." He shifted his weight, then added, "So, a bunch of us are starting a history club, looking at how different cultures and traditions handled major events. Mrs. Winters is sponsoring it. You want in?" Eliza looked at him in surprise. "Who's a bunch of us?" "Me, Jasmine, Marcus, and actually, Trevor asked about it too, which was weird, but Mrs. Winters said it's open to anyone genuinely interested." The invitation felt like more than just a club opportunity. It was acceptance, connection, purpose. "Yes," Eliza said. "I'd like that." When she got home that afternoon, Eliza carefully placed Eleanor's Bible on her desk, running her fingers over the worn leather cover. The scent of aged paper rose to meet her, familiar and comforting now. She opened to where she'd replaced the repaired letter and found Eleanor's handwritten note on Psalm 27. "Darkness doesn't last. Light returns. Remember this." The wall clock ticked softly. Tick, tick, tick. No longer a countdown to humiliation, but simply marking the passage of time, the connection between past and present, the continuation of stories across generations. 3 months later, on the last day of school, Eliza found herself surrounded by an unlikely group in the library. Noah, Jasmine, Marcus, and yes, even Trevor, who had gradually become less hostile and occasionally even thoughtful. The History Through Personal Narratives Club had grown to 12 members, each bringing family stories, letters, or artifacts to their discussions. "My mom found my great-grandfather's war medals," Trevor was saying, uncharacteristically animated. "And letters he wrote from the Pacific. I'm going to bring them next time." "That would be great," Eliza replied, meaning it. "We could compare his experiences with Eleanor's perspectives from London." As the final bell rang and students began dispersing for summer vacation, Noah lingered beside Eliza. "What you started with that paper? It's pretty cool how it changed things." "I didn't start anything," Eliza protested. "I just wrote about my great-grandmother's Bible." "Yeah, but you stood by it, even when everyone was mocking you. That's what made the difference." He glanced at the library clock. Tick, 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 and added, "Anyway, my parents said you're welcome to come over any time this summer. My grandfather is visiting next month and has all these stories about growing up during the Cultural Revolution. Different perspective, but same time period as your research." The invitation warmed her. "I'd like that." As they walked out into the bright June sunshine, Eliza realized something had fundamentally shifted. The Bible, that had once been a source of mockery and humiliation, had become a bridge, not just to her family's past, but to her classmates, to other traditions, to a wider understanding of shared human experience. In her backpack, wrapped carefully in protective cloth, Eleanor's Bible carried its familiar scent of aged paper and wisdom. No longer a target for ridicule, but a reminder that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's purpose, despite fear. And sometimes that purpose creates ripples no one could have anticipated, connecting past to present, stranger to friend, division to understanding. The last note Eleanor had written in the margins, which Eliza had only discovered while working on her paper, seemed particularly fitting now. "The smallest light dispels darkness. Be that light." In her own small way, perhaps she had been.